right, everyone. Happy Andor week coming up. Just in a few days, we're going to get the release of the new Cassian Andor series on Disney Plus. Definitely looking forward to it, and definitely something I've been looking forward to for quite a while. And yeah, wanted to take an opportunity to go back and revisit Rogue One. Now, Cassia, something that you and I have, we've kind of talked about it just ourselves, but not really on the podcast, but something we've wanted to, dive into a little bit. We do a lot of talk about the hero's journey, but there's a heroine's journey as well, and it's not something we've really spent a lot of time talking about on the podcast, and I thought that this would be a really good way to kind of look at the heroine's journey and how it relates to Jyn Erso's story in Rogue One.
Yeah, I'm very excited to talk about the heroine's journey in more depth on the podcast, the main hub. On Patreon, occasionally, we do, a review of Maureen Murdoch's, the heroine's journey, but it's good just to talk about it on our main pod.
Yeah, absolutely, because, like I said, we talk a lot about the hero's journey, but there's definitely a different kind of way to tell that tale, and that is in the heroine's journey because it's very different. And you say heroine's journey, you think of like a female lead in a story or a female centric story, but that's not always the case, right? Like you have some characters, like Harry Potter goes through more of a heroine's journey, so it's not really strictly a gender based thing. It's just more of kind of the way that your story is playing out, right?
Yeah, and the main differences between a hero's and heroine's journey. The hero's journey is kind of more represented in our society and culture. It's kind of based more on the external goals. The heroine's journey is kind of it's about the interior journey. Kind of like someone feels like their self-worth isn't fulfilled with some of the external things, so they kind of have to dive into themselves to kind of find that wholeness and everything. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and we'll get more into it.
Yeah, it seems to me like the heroine's journey is more that something is kind of thrust upon the character versus the hero's journey where there's kind of that call to adventure and spurns the story going forward. It feels almost a little bit more kind of the character is just placed in this situation versus making kind of the conscious decision to go and do something about it. So a little bit different there. And of course you mentioned her name. Maureen Murdoch was kind of the one who presented this idea. She was someone that studied the hero's journey and kind of came up with this heroine's journey that's been focused on. And then there's some really great books, one that I think both you and I have read. I know you've read it because you were the one that told me to read it, but that's Maria Tatar's The Heroine with 1,001 Faces, and that's a really good one because that gives you some more kind of like clear-cut illustrations in modern day like TV shows and movies, stuff like that, so you can see how the story arc plays out a little bit more.
Yeah, and Maria Tatar, she teaches at Harvard. So while her book is still accessible, it's still, I would say, kind of cerebral, deep, and I would say Gail Carriger is kind of the Chris Vogler to Maria Tatar's Joseph Campbell, I would say. Mm-hmm. So Gail Carriger, she wrote The Heroine's Journey, and it's a little bit shorter, and it kind of explains for a more contemporary audience the difference between the hero's and the heroine's journey using pop culture. So, yeah, some really good examples of books by multiple different women. So, I love reading, and you can always tell us about what you read. So, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So make sure to go out to your local bookstore and check one or a couple of these out if you're interested in stories and storytelling and kind of the the difference between the hero and the heroine's journey. But like I said, we are here today to talk about Rogue One. We are getting amped up for Andor to start. But Rogue One is a story more about Jyn Erso. Cassian's going to have to wait for his show to start, and then maybe once that concludes, we'll go back and talk about his hero's journey and how they kind of line up. But Jyn was an awesome character. I loved seeing her in this film, kind of taking the lead of this thing and really kind of putting the whole hope of the rebellion on her back as she's going through and getting those Death Star plans. And I thought it was a really interesting way to tell kind of that story that we knew of, but not exactly how it played out. So seeing it on screen, I thought was pretty cool. And then going through kind of the steps of the heroine's journey and trying to pick out where I thought Jyn's story was and kind of alignment, to the circular narrative was a lot of fun. So, Cassia, did you get a chance to watch Rogue One recently and think about her path here?
I didn't get to watch it recently, but I did watch White House Down, so I got to partake of real cinema. So
That's right. Sometimes you have to make choices, and sometimes those choices involve watching White House Down. But
yeah.
but that's okay because Rogue One is a story that we both really like, and it's a classic Star Wars story, and I'm very excited to get into it. So.
Yeah.
Cassia, there are 10 steps here to the heroine's journey, and it's going to go in a circle just like the hero's journey does. Mine does get a little wonky at the end as we go through here, but let's go ahead and start with step 1. The heroine separates from the feminine. I was just going to read kind of this here off of Maureen Murdoch's kind of blog. So basically, step 1, it's the feminine is often a mother or mentor figure or a societally prescribed feminine, marginalized, or outsider role. So step 1, Cassia, do you have any, where do you think Jyn's story is here in step 1? The heroine separates from the feminine.
I saw this as Jyn's mother dies.
Mm-hmm.
And she's separated from her family as a young kid and has to, join the rebellion. Saw's version of the rebellion at a young age.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I had, the same thing there. The separation, obviously, when with her mother dying, but just the separation from her parents. You see kind of the closeness that you have there as Jyn's mother is giving her that kyber crystal necklace, and that's something that she wears throughout the whole film as a means to be close to her mother. But yeah, definitely the separation there from her mother and really kind of both of the parents, which then propels us to step 2.
Yeah, identification with the masculine and gathering of allies. I feel like there's a whole backstory we don't really get to see with Jyn, her days with Saw and his rebellion, but I kind of saw this as like you see her on Wobani and she is broken out of the Imperial prison by K2SO and Cassian Andor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had the same exact things here in my notes. I said potentially, straight away when, that hatch opens up and Saw Gerrera is there to take her in. And on a side note, Rebel Rising is a really good and pretty easy read if you want to get in a quick book before Andor starts this week. But yeah, I think too it's when she is rescued from that prison transport and is united there with K2 and Cassie, and that's where I saw her step 2, the identification with the masculine and gathering of allies. And then carrying on here, step 3, the road and trials and meeting of ogres and dragons. So these are basically just people that are getting in your way. Cassia, who are the ogres and dragons in Jyn's story, do you think?
Krennic, he looks great in a cape,
Mm-hmm.
The Imperials, I would say. Maybe to an extent, Darth Vader is kind of like the lead dragon that we don't really see until the very end in an iconic hallway scene.
That's
But
right.
what is that creature that threatens the pilot that kind of came to my
Oh,
mind.
the boar gullet, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, this movie does kind of have like seven protagonists, even though I would say like Cassian and Jyn are the main ones. But
Hmm.
sometimes you can kind of see some steps of the journey covered in like foil characters or
Hmm.
supporting characters, and that's kind of what came to my mind. What about you?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I hadn't even actually thought of Krennic. I was thinking of it more in terms of who were people within her own kind of inner circle that were playing this role of ogres and dragons and kind of standing in her way. And I'd actually written down K2 and Cassian as being kind of her antagonists in this position because they're I don't. They're not fully trusting of her. They don't really want to believe her. They're kind of taking her along on this ride because it's something that they're kind of told to do. Obviously, K2 has to do it because Cassian said so. Just as he says. But I kind of thought as them as the ogres and dragons to Jin's story.
That's a good point. Because I think, like, on Jin's quest for wholeness, she has to go through some things before she's able to kind of bond with the new people in her life. She has a hard time letting people in, I think.
Yeah, I they don't quite fill like that full role where they're trying to to destroy her necessarily, but I felt like they were kind of an obstacle that she had to overcome in her story and her own sort of journey here as we're going through the film. So that's who I'd picked out as the ogres and dragons, and that takes us to step number 4.
Step number 4, experiencing the boon of success. I guess they kind of figure out on Jeddah what they need to do, but they don't experience the boon of success too long because then they kind of see what the Death Star is capable of. Like, what do you think step number 4 is?
Yeah, I think that Jin's boon here is getting that message from her dad, Galen, and learning that he designed a flaw in the Death Star, right? Because she had gone kind of her whole, the majority of her life thinking that her dad was working for the bad guys. Didn't have any sort of communication with him in this time, and then kind of being back reunited with Saw, and then learning, that he was doing this basically because he had to and he was trying to protect everyone and built that design flaw into the Death Star. I thought that just getting that knowledge was her boon.
Yeah. Stardust. It's a beautiful scene. Well acted. And speaking of death, step number 5 is the heroine awakens to feelings of spiritual aridity slash death. I kind of thought this was the seeing Jeddah destroyed when there is no horizon, kind of in Rogue One. What do you see it as?
Yeah, that's actually a really good one. I hadn't thought about that. Witnessing the death from this sort of this big super weapon that ultimately she's just finding out about that her dad had done. That's a really good one actually. So good job identifying that one. I went a little bit more literal with mine. Is then when they go to find her father, Cassian's going to kill him, but when she sees her father die there on kind of that landing strip, that was what I'd kind of identified as her step number 5, the heroine awakening to the spiritual aridity and death. But yeah,
Yeah.
when Galen died there, a little bit more literal, a little bit more metaphorical, the way you kind of saw it.
Maybe it's one big step, metaphorical to literal.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I mean, because on one hand, yeah, you're seeing the weapon in action, and you're seeing the death that can cause. But then you're also, on the other hand, you're seeing the death of the person that is giving you the opportunity to hopefully destroy this thing that can cause so much death. So yeah, so maybe a little bit of a circularness there in that one too.
Yeah.
All right.
Um,
All right, so heading on to step number 6 here. So this is the initiation and descent to the goddess. So this is basically what that means is that the heroine's facing a crisis in some sort, and basically kind of her current path down this more masculine hero's journey kind of steps have fallen, or have fallen. Falen's not a word. Have failed.
It sounds like a good Star Wars name if it hasn't been used already. So
that's right. Copyright.
Yeah. Yeah. So initiation and descent to the goddess. I kind of saw that as Jyn has to come face to face with her father. I mean, this is maybe one of my criticisms of Rogue One, even though I think it's my favorite Star Wars spinoff. You know, we have the first female protagonist, and she kind of puts on more of like maybe a Han Solo air, you know, and the mom dies. I don't even know the mom's name. That's like, yeah. So
her name is Lyra.
Lyra, you know, rest in peace, Lyra. You know, like
that's right. Yeah.
I just mean like we have so much dad stuff in Star Wars, and I love the cast of Rogue One, but I kind of would have maybe liked it if Lyra were still alive. Like we do have that iconic necklace, but I kind of would have wanted something a bit more substantial from Lyra, because I think in Star Wars we got the dad stuff down by now. I kind of want to see some new stories being told, you know, and I don't know what got lost in the Gareth Edwards version going to the Tony Gilroy version, but that's maybe one criticism I have.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Yeah, we have a lot of dad stuff. We don't get a lot of mom stuff. Maybe as we get more into this Rebel stuff, hopefully Hera can kind of correct that ship a little bit, and then maybe start getting some more of these stories, because I'm right there with you. And that was one of the kind of the interesting things about doing this in the under the lens of like the heroine's journey, because right here, kind of as we get into step 6, it really almost feels like it was going through a heroine's journey perfectly fine, and then it kind of it's like pump the brakes, because we're going to go into more of a hero's journey. So these things started to get a little bit fuzzier for me to identify quite as easily. But for myself here on step 6, initiation and descent to the goddess, I saw that as her confronting Cassian when they're kind of having the little blow up on the ship there after after she'd seen her dad die, and she's confronting him about that, he was going to kill him, and he's saying, well, those were my orders, but I didn't kill him. So I thought that confrontation with Cassian was her initiation and descent to the goddess.
Yeah, that's a good point. And then step 7, the heroine urgently yearns to reconnect with the feminine. And I guess maybe that's her realizing her dad wasn't working for the Empire. They reconnect tragically as he dies, and she connects with her Rogue One group, But yeah, Star Wars kind of dips into more of the external hero's journey a bit more, so I would like something in the future to kind of tap more into the heroine's journey.
Yeah, definitely. And this again, like I said, it's starting to get a little bit fuzzier for me to kind of pick these out a little bit. I thought that her urgently yearning to reconnect with the feminine, I thought that was you kind of mentioned when she gets back with the Rogue One crew, but I was thinking of it more of when they get back to like the rebel base, and she's telling everyone about, that her father had built in these, this kind of this the faulty mechanism within the Death Star, but no one's kind of believing her. No one is taking up arms with her. The Rebel Alliance is very kind of fractured. That's where I saw is kind of her yearning to reconnect. She's trying to get everyone on board this plan that they can go and get these Death Star plans, but no one really seems to be willing to go to bat with her, at least at first.
Yeah. I guess she has to uh, kind of looking through step 8, Heroine heals the mother-daughter split.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I guess I kind of see 5 through 8 kind of as one giant step that uh, it's like Jyn has to come to terms with the fact that her parents were rebels,
Mm-hmm.
and like she can't really run away from it. She's a rebel, and I think she makes peace with her life and what's happened so far.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you bring up a good point that you kind of look at those steps as steps together, and I look at the steps here as we're getting into step 8. I look at steps 8, 9, and 10 as not interchangeable, but at least in this story, they feel like they're kind of interweaving. Like I'm picking up,
Yeah.
kind of bits and pieces of 8, 9, and 10 here as we get into kind of the final act of the movie on Scarif. So let's talk about step 8 here. The heroine heals the mother-daughter split. So for me, I found a couple of things, and like I said, these kind of jump around, so these will these will be interlaced a little bit. But I thought, kind of the crew coming together as Rogue One was part of that healing. I thought at the end, right before she uploads the plans, telling Krennic that she was, Galen and Lyra's daughter, who she was. I thought that was a way that she kind of healed that split, and then transmitting the plans, I thought was probably healing of that split as well. Kind of, obviously it's good for the Rebel Alliance to get that stuff, but for her personally, it was good because, then once those plans got out, everyone in the galaxy had to believe her and believe that her father really did, design this so that it could be destroyed.
Yeah. And I guess mother in this movie represents parents.
Yeah, you have to give it a little bit of leadway, yeah, and which again, is why it would be nice to see some more mother daughter, or at the very like more mother son type of stuff. We got a little bit of it with with Anakin and Shmi, but definitely need more of that and more exploration of that, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, 8, 9, and 10, they kind of go together. Step 9, the heroine heals the wounded masculine within. I kind of see it as she goes on the final mission and Rogue One goes with her. She inspires the rebels to go to Scarif. She holds her mother's necklace and she knows that her dad died doing what was right. Um,
Hmm.
Step 10, where do you see that?
Yeah, so step 10 is the heroine integrates the masculine and the feminine, and I actually think that it does put a pretty good bow on it, because I think it's kind of that kind of that penultimate scene there. So you literally have Cassian and Jyn, holding each other at the very end of the world. So it's bringing kind of those two pieces of this thing together. Now I think more of the hero's journal, the quote unquote masculine. Cassian Andor story, I think we're going to get more of that here, obviously, when his series starts up this coming week. But I thought that was just kind of symbolic of that last step of the heroine's journey.
Yeah, I like how you think mythically, metaphorically, because I was like, oh, at the end, like you have the masculine and feminine like holding each other at the end as they
Mm-hmm.
prepare to die, and I think it's just beautiful, and more more movies should end with death, you know. Um,
Yeah.
no, just kidding, but maybe really, um, because that's what wars are, is sacrifice,
Mm-hmm.
and it kind of shows like maybe this is as close to Saving Private Ryan that Star Wars will get, but I liked it.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I think too, if you kind of look outside of Jin's story, here for number 10 of integrating the masculine and feminine stories, you can kind of even look then to the very last scene where you have Darth Vader going on his epic hallway scene, and you have adjacent to that you have Princess Leia getting the plans for the Death Star. So that's kind of another parallel of the masculine and feminine sort of roles there too. But yeah, I mean, obviously it's the embrace at the end of the world as the Death Star is raining down terror on the beaches of Scarif.
We got a double shot of metaphorical mythic espresso. It's espresso. I can say it normally. Espresso.
That's right. It is pumpkin spice latte time, and we can get double shots of espresso in there in our Rogue One story for sure. But yeah, that's kind of just the brief rundown of kind of the steps of the heroine's journey. And I thought it was a lot of fun going back and kind of watching it and trying to pick out kind of the different pieces of Jyn's story. But Cassie, let's talk a little bit just about Rogue One, just in general here, as we kind of, start winding this down and getting ready for Andor. You'd mentioned it as, one of your favorite Star Wars stories, especially, outside of the main saga there. But what are some highlights, or what things do you like about Rogue One?
I love the third act. I love that we get to see some politics. We get to see Mon Mothma tragically still in her white and silver tassel dress, but in Andor we're gonna get to see her in a dress that is not that, so I'm happy about that.
Yeah,
but yeah, I love Rogue One. It kind of just gets a little bit more, kind of less binary, like good evil, Star Wars sometimes does. And the third act is incredible. Just seeing it in theater, sharing it with everyone, like everyone was so happy. It was after episode 7, before episode 8, and just everyone was riding high on all things Star Wars, and I saw it opening night. I think it was spoiled for me that everyone dies, but I'm like, oh, they're not gonna kill everyone, and then they did kill everyone. It was like, yeah, but it's about the journey, not the destination. And I ended up seeing it a couple more times, and one of them was in the motion seats. I saw that with Coden, and Coden did not handle the motion that well, but I loved it. So that was fun, because it's just like you're moving around with it. It's like a ride, And my favorite characters, I would say, are Jyn Cassian, which is maybe where I got Cassia from, and K2SO. Rogue One is K2SO good, Sorry for the rogue pun, but...
Wow, you're doubling down on it. I love it.
Doubling down, like espresso.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they do make a really good trio here, Jyn, Cassian, and K2SO for sure. Yeah, Rogue One is great. It's a really good film, right? It's it's a good Star Wars story, but it's also just kind of on top of that, it's a really good film. And a lot of that has to do with the acting, because the acting talent in this thing is insane. Anytime you get Ben Mendelsohn and Mads Mikkelsen in something together, it's probably going to be an A+, guaranteed amazing time. So that doesn't even think about like Donnie Yen and Riz Ahmed and all of these actors are so are so incredible. So yeah, that's great. It looks great. It sounds great. The music by shoot, I just lost it. Why can't I remember his name? Michael Giacchino, who does the score for this. It's just brilliant. I recently got it on vinyl, so I've been listening to it a couple of times, and then just watching it. It sounds great, and it looks great, and it's just kind of this big world and a story we kind of knew but kind of didn't know, and the way they were able to weave new characters in and out of it and introduce us to new people. And one of those people is Cassian Andor, played by Diego Luna, who is very excellent, and so excellent in fact that we are getting a whole series about Cassian Andor, which is going to be coming out next week. If you're listening to this when this goes live. It's debuting on September the 21st, 2022, and it's something that I'm very much looking forward to. Cassia, what's your hype level? I guess
My hype level
go that way.
is high. Um, I'm just excited to see some kind of like spy espionage, kind of like James Bond kind of flavors in Star Wars, and I'm excited to see the Imperial Senate. Like,
Ooh,
like so excited for that. Mon Mothma gets to wear other dresses other than her white silver tassel dress. Like, good for her. It only took about 40 years.
That's right.
And then I'm excited for like the final episode whenever that happens. I think there will be a few seasons, but in my mind, it's going to lead into Rogue One, like Rogue One led into episode 4. And their final mission will be to liberate Jyn Erso, you know, and we'll get to see Felicity Jones. But that's just me thinking way too far ahead, I guess, far off into the future, like a Skywalker. But what are you excited for?
Yeah, so this has always been either my number one or number two thing that I was most looking forward to out of that original kind of Disney Investor Day slate of things that they had, because Rogue One is a movie that I like. Of the Star Wars movies, it's probably the one that I've seen the fewest times. I don't seem to go back and revisit it as often as I do the other ones, but for some reason, the story and thinking about what they could do with it was very intriguing to me from a standpoint of the politics of it, of like the spy and espionage like aspects of it, like you said, more of like a James Bond kind of a thing, and just a different feeling story than we've gotten before. I think is really great. I'm excited to see where they go with it. I'm excited to see Mon Mothma at cocktail parties. I'm excited to see Diego Luna like figuring out what the Rebel Alliance really is. I'm very excited for it and can't wait for it to start, and I think it's going to be great, and I'm definitely looking forward to it. And I think something that would be fun, Cassia, is after the series wraps, or maybe after the season wraps, or something like that, we get a really good line from Cassian in Rogue One where he says that he's been in this fight since he was 6 years old. Now, Jyn doesn't throw it back in his face, because I was looking, and Jyn got her parents, her mom got killed and her dad got taken, and she went with Saw when she was 8. So she's been in this fight for a long time too. She didn't throw it back in his face, but I think it would be fun to kind of go back and see how these circles kind of mirror each other and reflect on each other, and maybe do like a little Cassian Andor Rogue One ring theory kind of thing.
Yeah, that would be fun. And in a way, I've been in this fight since I was 6 years old, because I've been a Star Wars fan that long. So, yeah. Love Star Wars. Love Andor. Excited for it. We need more heroines' journeys, Any closing thoughts?
No, just I will echo that. We do need more heroines' journeys, and looking at Jen's heroine's journey was a good time. So let us know, if you're excited about Andor, what you think about Jin's story, what you think about Rogue One, because a lot of people just got to go back to the theater and see it. It released it a bunch, not any by me, unfortunately, so I didn't get to, but I got to watch it at home and think about all these characters again, which was a good time. So I hope everyone enjoys the premiere of Andor next week. Let us know how you like it, and thanks for joining us on this heroine's journey today, and may the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you. P.S. Rogue One is way better than Redacted.